This is episode 180.
The Ultimate Deck Podcast. Need a show about outdoor living? This is where it's at. With your hosts, Shane Chapman and Way Laurent. Thank you for tuning in. Now let the show begin. Yeah. The Ultimate Deck Podcast. Let's go.
Good day, my orange little friend.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great.
Big shit-eating grin on your face
Couldn't be
today.
better.
Hey?
Do you have a celebration horn that you can push on that thing, Bryce?
Just wait.
He
Nope.
was not ready
That's
for
not
that.
that one. Yeah, that
There it is. Probably not discussed before, but Wade's a big Oilers fan, so last night was
one. One
good
step
for
closer
him.
to the Stanley Cup.
Good for him. Yep. And our general
How
manager
long
here,
has
Regina,
it been?
Oh, I don't know. The last time they were in the Western Conference Final, I think, was 2004. So that's 18 years ago.
18 years ago.
It's a little boot of time.
But I remember it. The goalie was 40 years old then. It was Rolston.
Holy smokes.
And that was like Ryan Smith was playing and Pronger was there. It was, anyways.
Good time. Our general manager at the Regina store here, Fraser, is a huge Flames fan.
I think the
Huge Calgary
word is
fan.
obnoxious.
Yeah, annoyingly so.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of fun because you and him had a bit of a bet.
Mhm.
I didn't really have a dog in this fight, but I decided to choose one before the series started. I was like, well, I'm going to cheer for the Oilers. I chose right,
You
I
chose
guess.
right.
And but
That's
yeah,
how
you
the
guys had a
Flames
bet,
fan
so-
are now. All my friends that are Flames fans are all like, yeah, well, I'm actually an Avs fan now. They've all
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah, of course. But you had Fraser wearing your Oilers jersey this morning at
Yes.
work
It
because
was
that
really
was the
good.
bet.
Yep.
So that was good. And
Don't
he
worry, we got a
he left
picture of
early.
it. So
He said it felt really great.
he said
to
it felt
to have a
great.
winning shirt on.
I bet. Yeah.
He said he didn't get a rash at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the excitement of last night. What do you like? How far do you think they're going to go? Realistically.
I think it depends on who comes out of the other series.
Okay.
I think if Colorado comes out, I believe that they won't be able to get past Colorado, but if St. Louis makes it, I think they got a shot. So
Okay.
if they're playing against Colorado, it's going to be really hard, like really hard. Colorado is unreal.
Colorado's your favorite for the Cup?
I don't know. Tampa Bay looks pretty strong.
Okay.
Tampa Bay's coming out of the East.
You
They're
heard
the
it here
champions.
first. Oilers will fizzle out at some point.
Just like Wade's answers.
I don't know how they could win. Like, I don't know. If St. Louis goes and it's Edmonton versus Tampa Bay, then Edmonton's got a shot at that. But
Okay.
Tampa Bay is so strong. They're the champions 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So it's like they're the best team until somebody beats them.
That's right. Time will tell.
Let's talk about the other elephant in the room. We didn't have a podcast last week because somebody had a baby.
Not me.
Not me.
My wife, blame her. Yeah, finally showed up. So this is my wife's third child, fourth.
My wife's third
from-
child.
Yep, fourth for me because I do have one from a
That's
previous
true.
marriage.
Yep.
I've always got to clarify this because in the hospital it's always like, how many pregnancies have you had? And she's like, well, this is 3. And so they're always like, oh my goodness, 3 boys, that's so crazy. And it's like, it's 4. It's actually 4 boys. I brought one to the party.
Yep.
And yeah, so the first 2 that she had were both a day or 2 early from her due date. And so we were fully expecting early on this one too, at least a day or 2, if not 3 or 4 days. And then he ended up being 4 days late. So I took last week off work thinking I'd be in full baby daddy mode last week. And then didn't even happen until my days are all messed up, like the end of the week.
It was like
Thursday
Friday,
or
wasn't it? Thursday,
Friday or whatever the 19th was.
Yeah.
Finally came. So yeah, now we have another baby at home. So yeah, it's busy.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Exciting times.
It is exciting times. It's different, I'll tell you. Like all my routines, the couple routines I actually had in my life are already like shot to piss. Like it's just like everything in my household is just different now. It's just like, oh, it's just starting over again. But I mean, it's wonderful.
It's wonderful.
So-
It's wonderful.
Yeah. In other sports news, the CFL is going to happen this year.
Are we a sports podcast?
Apparently, we're
Yeah.
a sports podcast.
Yeah. Well,
sports
we talked about the Oilers.
sports and fatherhood
in the
podcast.
NHL. The players were striking last week, and then
Yep.
they came to the CFLPA approved the offer that the league put forward. They took it to the members and then they voted no. So it was like the CFLPA approved it, the player reps approved it, the players voted it down. So back to like potential season loss, but they did end up settling that yesterday.
Oh, they did settle it.
CFL season is back. It's going to happen all 18 games.
Yeah, because wasn't the messaging like, yeah, this is kind of it. This is the offer.
Yeah, the league was like, cute. Okay, here's one more offer.
And
Take
if
it or
you
leave it.
vote it
If you
down,
don't accept it,
they're
we
just
don't
like,
have a league.
no problem.
Then
We
we're
just
gonna
won't play
lockout.
this year.
Yeah. So
No problem.
No
anyways,
problem.
They made it back to the table. They came up with a deal, and now they're going to play some football. Starting today, actually, preseason. 2 games today.
Oh, really?
So there you go. That's the news.
Who's playing
for
first?
sports?
What's happening?
I don't even know.
Oh.
I believe the Riders and Bombers are playing today, I think. And then I could be
Seriously?
wrong in that. They were supposed to play earlier, but it got postponed because of the strike.
Okay.
And it got pushed to like today or something. And then I think like maybe the Red Blacks and the Argos or
But
something.
like
today.
in Winnipeg, probably. There's no
Hmm.
chance it's in town.
I don't know that. But yeah, probably not, or else we
We would have heard
we
something.
would be aware of that.
Yeah.
So probably not. But
Mm.
anyways, if you're not a follower of the CFL so far, but you listen to this podcast, congratulations. You are now a Saskatchewan Roughriders fan.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Did you want to talk about any of the content rules? Like I saw a little blurb about how many snaps.
No, it's confusing.
Okay.
That was what the whole pushback was so in the CFL, they've got a Canadian content, like a ratio, right? There has to
Yeah.
be so many Canadian players on the roster and so many starting spots are reserved for Canadian players.
Correct.
And the league was trying to like get rid of that.
Well, they were trying to reduce it because they were trying to bring up better product to the field.
Right. They were just like, let the best player play. And the players union was like, no, that means our members lose jobs.
Right.
It's like, yeah, but your other
Only
members
the
that
bad
get the
ones.
jobs. Nobody actually, yeah. So anyways,
Everybody gets a
Then
job.
the good ones that come in, they'll be your new members.
right. Yeah. Not how
The
they see it.
better players.
That's not how they think.
So there was a tweak to it. The league kind of got its way. They reduced, I don't know. It's confusing. But anyways, it's
Sounded
football's
like
back.
whatever team has the most Canadians playing during the season gets a bonus draft pick in the second round.
That's part of it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not worth it.
So there, the rule used to be you had to have, there was 21 Canadian, I think on a 48 person roster, 21 spots for Canadians, 7 starting spots had to be Canadians, right?
Right.
There's 12 guys in the field up here on or offense and defense. So the number was 7. The league in its first offer was like, how about 0? And the CFLPA was like, how about you
Go back.
F your hat. And so that didn't start very well at all. Then the league was like, fine. But then they wanted to start naturalizing an American player. So if an American player has been with the same team for 3 years or in the league for 5 years, they can now be classified as a nationalized
Canadian player.
essentially, and they can consume one of those roster spots.
That's
So-
not bad.
So that's what they were pitching. It went back and forth. What they ended up settling on, I believe, was, I don't even remember. What they ended up, I think, settling on is still 7 Canadian spots plus 1 nationalized American spot, plus starting next year, 2 of those Canadian spots, you can rotate in an American player up to 49% of the snaps.
Wow,
That's why it gets confusing.
Super confusing.
Who like somebody's
Who
tracking
counts
that.
that?
Right. And then if the team violates that, they get fined afterwards. They review it at the end of the, like the teams have
Oh,
to
man.
have to like do the math in this. But
You
if
know-
they violate it, the team gets fined later.
You know what that means for the Riders? We're getting fined.
One more person.
Yeah.
One more person in the press box keeping track of how many snaps each
Yeah.
player gets.
And then you're right to encourage you to like
Do
stick
it.
with full blood Canadians 100% of the snaps. The 2 teams that play the most amount of snaps with full Canadian rosters earn 2 extra picks in the second round of the CFL draft, which I saw somebody say is the equivalent of throwing in a bag of pucks.
So I think
Thanks, guys.
that's funny. So I'm a huge fan of the bonus system, right? The bonus structure, as opposed to like forcing someone to do something. So it's like, if you want to, rather than saying everybody has to play with Canadians, it's like, if you choose to play with Canadians, here's how we'll reward you.
Mm,
You get
mhm.
this.
Yes,
right? And it's
that's
I think that's a great
Exactly.
setup. Rather than saying like you have to have
You
this
have
many
to.
Canadians, is like, well, that sucks. But it's like, if you are able to develop Canadians through the program and then you play more with them, we'll reward that.
I-
Because that's what we want.
My solution to it was, yes, get rid of the ratio completely so that the best available players can play. However, have some sort of incentive for Canadian players. For example, 15% of their contract doesn't apply against the cap, so that when you have wide receiver Canadian guy, wide receiver American guy, equally talented, you'll choose the Canadian guy because it's a less of a cap hit. Give them some sort of incentive where if all things are equal, the Canadian wins the job. That should be good enough, in my opinion.
Yep.
What we don't want to have is Canadian guy wins the job because we have to fill a ratio spot, even though the other guy was probably a little bit better of a player. That's the scenario you don't want.
Right.
And I think for the most part, when you're talking about the top 5 that are starting, probably not a big deal. Like there's some really like Canadian football players they're better now than they used to be, right? Like the best rusher in the league last year, Andrew Harris, is Canadian. There's a lot of really, really, really good 100%. Canadian players.
Yeah.
The issue isn't the first few guys that are earning starter spots. It's the 7th guy who has to be there. And what if he gets injured and he has to be backed up by another Canadian who is like, who's the 11th best?
Right. Yeah.
That's where it starts to affect the product. And that's why the league was like, let's get rid of this, and just not going to happen with the CFLP. So anyways, USMC says English Premier League used to do something similar. Yeah, it's through this whole discussion, it was brought up that like literally just what every league in the world outside of the 3 major US leagues, NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL, don't have ratio homegrown talent rules. Those don't, the major ones. Yep. But pretty much everything else does. MLS, European, like soccer leagues all do, like every Japanese baseball does.
Yep.
Everywhere else has these things. It's not weird. It's just that the main ones that we're familiar with in the States don't have those roster rules.
Right, because they're probably mostly American anyway.
Maybe it's an imperial measuring system as opposed to a metric measuring system.
Maybe
right.
That's the
metric's better. So
that's what we should have done with the Canadian ratio. Did it in US dollars so that 7 became 4 starting guys, and then that would have been better. Anyways, we've 25% has to be English and 3 starters, says USMC. Yeah, 25% of the roster has to be English. There you go. So
there you go.
Bryce, are you ready to hit the button on this thing and get this podcast rolling?
Let's do it.
All right, so today I've got baby brain, so I was like not really wanting to put too much thought into what we were talking about today. So I said, Bryce, give it to us.
Yeah. Pretty good because I have 0.
Oh, yeah, you guys are right on top of this.
He's got won the series last night brain, and I've got baby brain, and so a couple of us are supping.
This should be interesting.
What we're going to talk about today is the top questions. What'd you come up with? 5, 10, 17, 4
1,
and a
2,
half?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 10.
About 10. The top about 10
about 10
questions that customers ask about the deck world. So
we've
not seen these. You're just going to fire them, and we're going to talk about them.
The frequently asked deck questions.
10-ish.
What do you think the most asked question is?
Oh, good one.
Does it get hot?
Does it get hot?
Boy, oh boy, I feel like that's up there, yep.
Yep, that was definitely the most asked question on all of the research that I had done. And that's why it's on a big billboard. So the first question today is, does Composite get hot?
Wade, would you like to roll with that one? Or
yes.
What? Yep. Next question.
Yeah.
I could have answered that one with the button.
The problem is everybody knows it gets hot. They just want you to answer that differently.
Yeah, they do.
They come in here and they're like, so my friend has a deck and he says it gets really hot. So it's like, does it get really hot?
Yeah, gets hot.
The context behind this is like, yes, it gets hot because things that sit under hot sun get hot. That includes you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Your pets, sidewalks, beach sand, roadways, car dashboards. Like if it's baking in the sun and it's really hot out, it's going to be hot. There's also like ice until it goes away is the only thing that stays cold in the sun. And you've got very limited amount of time before that changes.
That's like beer.
Then it's not ice.
That's like beer in my hand, right? It has a very limited amount of time.
You just drink it all, and then it's an empty can.
It's pretty funny.
So we've done a lot of testing over the years because we're always curious too. And the reason behind that usually is because there are products out there that claim to be not as hot. Moisture Shield claims to have cool deck technology that keeps it not as hot. Clubhouse used to have cool pigment technology, which claimed it didn't get as hot. What was the other one I was just trying to think of?
Trex
AZEK claims it's 15% less hot. Trex's new boards they just came out with in the Northeast U.S., not available here, claim less hot.
Yep.
But the thing is...
Yeah, I was going to say, the common comparison between all of the cool deck things is that they're all white colors, like light.
Right. And so here's why we started doing our own testing, because you can't believe marketing buzzwords sometimes, often. And so we got personally burned by this. Appreciate the pun there, boys. But you're
going to have to work a little harder for me.
When we
you didn't laugh at my jokes earlier off camera.
Yeah, you're stone inside.
He's got a baby that laughs at everything he says now. So,
right. Well, not that
that's
one.
That's not true.
He just 2-year-old probably does.
Would, though.
Yeah, he just stares into nothingness. Sleeps 95% of the time and stares at nothing.
Yeah, it's a textured ceiling, bud.
This won't be the first one you'll see. The reason we kind of got into wanting to test ourselves was because back when we opened the store, we had a few brands that we brought in, Clubhouse being one of them, which we had discovered this down at one of the shows and thought, this is a really great product. This is like great traction, great scratch resistance.
Super durable.
Cool pigment technology, says it stays cooler. This is awesome. Brought it in, told people, yeah, it's got cool pigment technology, so it doesn't get as hot as the other stuff. Installed it, hot. It was hot.
It's hot. AF.
Like, it was absolutely not any less hot than other brands. And so we're like, what the hell? Like, what the hell is this cool pigment thing?
You lied to me.
And then we wanted to qualify that with numbers. So we started doing our own testing. We took all the brands out and we'd shoot them with send them in the sun, shoot them with the
heat gun,
and record temperatures ourselves and found out that, yeah, it isn't any less hot. How do they claim that? And it's like, well, I guess they could claim that if their previous boards without cool pigment technology were hotter. But that's like a relative thing, and that's not what people think when they hear cool pigment. So we're like, you know what? Enough. So then Moisture Shield came out. So
we stopped telling people that.
Right.
We're like, they all get hot.
Yeah, they get hot.
Yeah.
Moisture Shield came out with cool deck technology. I remember the first time seeing it. It was under a heat lamp at a trade show down in the States again. They had like AZEK and Trex and Moisture Shield with cool deck under a heat lamp. I felt them, was like, oh my goodness, yeah, it's
significantly cooler.
Way less hot on my hand when I touch on this heat lamp. That's really awesome because that's a known issue. We went and tested them again the next time we did tests, and like they weren't really any less hot.
But we used a different we used a different heat source.
Right, the sun.
The one that your deck will be under.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Not the heat lamp that they use in a trade show.
Yep.
Which I don't know, but something about that ambient heat seems to me, it seemed to perform differently under sunlight versus radiant heat lamp.
Mm-hmm.
So now the colors of them the lightest one did score really well in our test.
Yes,
it was one of the coolest ones, if not the coolest or tied for the coolest.
It was the coolest.
I think it's 95% because the color of the board was really light because it was comparable to other boards that were light in color that didn't have cool deck technology.
Yeah.
Like Fibron Cottage, light gray, was also down around that temperature. And it's like, well, that one's...
It's just gray.
It's just light gray. This one's like a light taupey color, yellowy color.
Yep.
Like, of course it's going to be less hot.
But
so
the most important part of all of this is that the temperature of the board was still too hot to walk on with your bare feet.
Yep.
It was just cooler than the other ones relative. So these ones were so hot your feet blistered in 5 seconds and your feet blistered in 3 seconds on this one.
Exactly.
Like it's still screaming hot.
Yeah, it's still super hot.
And the only other one that was down there was the TimberTech whitewash cedar, which is white. So again, not a shocker that the whiteboard was less hot than the other ones. So yes, what we just discovered, and we've since done that test a few times now.
And we're doing it again this year.
We're doing it again this year.
Are we?
And so
wow,
we got new camera gear.
Kyler and I are.
We got new camera gear. Let's do that.
I do believe that the Moisture Shield Cool Deck makes a little bit of a difference, but their claim is I think it's 35% cooler, I think is what they say, than other comparable colors, whatever. We
didn't find
not personally seen that.
But
so
we found about 15% cooler.
And the darker color of Cool Deck Moisture Shield was in the middle of all the other ones that were also a little bit darker. Like to us, there wasn't a noticeable difference.
It was no dark slate. That was...
Yes. So what we say is if you're that concerned about the heat on the deck board, choose a lighter color. That's the only thing you can really do but understand that when it's 35 or 40 degrees above, 120 Fahrenheit, it's
hot.
They're all going to be hot.
Yep.
Right. So
it's all hot.
And the other thing too is we tested wood at these same times, hardwoods, softwoods, treated cedar, all this different stuff. Wood also gets hot.
Wood gets hot.
Yes, it was at the bottom where the lowest composites were as well. But if it's 40 above again, a wood deck is also hot. And if you oil it or paint it, hotter.
It's going to get hotter.
So put flip-flops on. If it's really hot out, put flip-flops on.
Yeah.
Heat dissipation, another thing. PVCs will dissipate heat much faster than composites.
faster.
Whole new ball game.
Shadow rolls in, cloud rolls in, water goes on the deck.
You can
Those
walk
cool
on it.
off right away.
Yeah.
Composites, they're dense, they hold heat, they radiate heat longer. But that's not what people are wondering when they're saying, does it get hot in
Next
sunlight? Does it
question.
get hot?
Next question.
There's a question here before we get on to the next thing here. Can you install this is from Instagram. Can you install decking over plywood on a second story porch, no awning, if you waterproof?
What?
As written, no, that's not a good idea. But if you're,
No waterproofing?
well, if you waterproof. So if you, can you install decking over
Yes.
plywood on a second story porch, no awning, if you waterproof? So yeah, as long as you waterproof that plywood and create a pitch for the water to drain off,
Yeah.
then you could
And then
sleeper on top of it and put
Space
decking
the
down.
decking off of,
Sure.
Yep.
But you could also just use a system like Trex Rain Escape and skip the plywood and the waterproofing the plywood. Just do Trex Rain
Unless, of
Escape
course,
or
they have,
Tri-Space.
like, if somebody has built this deck and it's already plywood.
Yeah, exactly. Then you could do an EPDM membrane or even like a
Or-
vinyl sheet or something,
Or take a skill saw,
or cut out the joist base.
cut the joist bays out.
Okay.
So, yes, ish.
You ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
You got any more Instagram questions?
No.
Okay. Can you paint composite?
No.
I didn't even believe
This is
that
a
this
top
was a question.
question?
Yeah, this was a top question.
Yes.
Most Googled composite question.
Yes, you can. But only the ends.
Why
That's
would
cut.
you?
Well, you can cut like where the end is cut, you can paint that. But that's it. Not the surface of the board.
You can't paint the surface of the board?
It'll just flake off.
Oh.
Like you could paint anything.
I suppose
just
the
whether
answer
you
is
want-
yes, but it's like,
Do you
why?
want it to stick?
Why? What's the point?
Are you interested in having the paint stay on the board?
My
Right.
guess is the source of this question comes from people that have old generation composites that looks like crap now because the
Certainly.
sun is faded and it's all stained and it's kind
There
of
you go.
flaked a bit and they're wanting to spruce it up. Could I paint it? Sure.
But it's not going to.
You could paint it.
So
It
we've
will
had.
adhere for an amount of time.
Yeah. I've had people ask me if they can oil that,
Yes.
right? And they're like, can we just take the Q-Tech and oil it?
Why?
Not an
I
approved
don't think it
application.
would
However, I've
look.
seen products out there that are composite deck oil. Like there's
Really?
products specifically
I-
for that.
like-
This is old generation stuff.
It'll work. Like
There's no reason it wouldn't.
absolutely would work. So if your deck is old and faded and not looking so sharp, you could put oil on it and it would absolutely make that board darker again.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. I just feel like it'd be so greasy. Like it just wouldn't absorb the way wood
It does
absorbs
not absorb
oil.
the same as wood does.
Yeah, I don't know. It would probably pool a bit more.
I know that
Presumably.
when you spill grease on it from the barbecue, like, right? Like I know that when you spill
Oh, yeah,
grease
I
from the
guess.
barbecue, it lands on there and then the board is brighter and it
Soaks in right away.
doesn't clean off.
That's
Stains up.
People want sometimes is like, if I oil the whole thing, will the grease spots be less noticeable? Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Probably. I would
Throw
I- like,
4 liter of canola oil all over your deck.
yeah, or a Q-Tech.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that I would encourage somebody to do that.
Now, if your composite deck that you have right now is a capped composite, has a cap stock layer on it that has, like a fade and stain warranty and everything else, there should be absolutely zero
Hard
reason
no.
to paint it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. It also won't adhere nearly as well because of that not shiny, but like that pure plastic surface. It's
Yeah.
just not going to adhere as well as it would with on the end cuts, like you said.
Yep.
Core of the board, it'll.
Didn't we get some samples the other day of composites that you are supposed to paint?
Well, we got, that stuff's weird.
Is it weird? I'm
That's
just
wood.
curious about it.
It's
Is it
wood.
wood or
was-
is it something
It was
else?
kind of a composite hardwood imitation thing that, you're supposed to oil it.
Which
don't
is
remember
kind of
what
like
it's
the
called.
bamboo stuff, right? It's like a wood composite that you can oil.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of a composite deck is so you don't have to do this shit.
It's maintenance free.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sure, you probably can, but you
Should
shouldn't
you?
have to anymore.
Probably not. Is composite cheaper than wood?
No.
That's the third question.
After 4 years, yes.
Yeah, there's asterisks to all these. Over a time period, eventually the cost of maintaining the wood deck is going to exceed what you spent on the composite up front.
Over the lifetime of the deck, I would think that composite is less expensive than than doing one in wood in the exact same shape.
Because your composite deck will last 30 years, 50 years,
Yeah,
depending what you build.
Depends how the
80
frame
years,
goes.
depending
right?
on what you
Depends
build
how
it
the
with.
frame goes.
Yeah.
The frame will fail first, probably.
Unless you do steel frame or you tape your joist or something to help with that.
Yep.
But the deck, like, so let's say your composite deck makes it 30 years. Let's say that on the low end, you've taped your joist or used steel, and your warranted board is 30 years.
30 years.
Should last longer than that anyways, but let's say it doesn't.
Yep.
You're going to replace your wood deck probably 3 times in that same time span. So if the composite deck cost you $8,000 today, the wood deck would have cost you 5, but the wood deck gets replaced twice again before the end of the life of the composite deck, and not costing $5,000 anymore. Because in 10 years from now, it's $8,000
And the maintenance on it.
and then 10 more years after that is $12,000 worth of wood deck and maintenance on that. It's like at the end of 30 years, you spent 8 up front on the composite, or what are we even at? $40,000 on the wood deck over
Yeah.
30 years. So long term, yeah, it's cheaper. Today, when you buy it, no, it's not
Your
cheaper.
initial purchase price is not.
Yeah. And that's assuming we're talking about pressure treated, like cheap of the cheap wood, which is where that question would be coming from. But if
Yep,
you
for
use
sure.
cedar, well, that's probably comparable to an entry level composite. If you're talking hardwoods, now we're the same or more.
Now you're mid-range. Yep.
So we got a couple questions here that we'll go after here as well. USMC, what
Go
you
ahead.
can do versus what you should do. That's in response to the paint question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What can you? Yeah. Should you? No. Quigley Decks in response to the plywood decking question says, to install decking on a second floor will probably require approval by an architect from the building inspector. So
Don't talk to those guys.
there you go.
Don't talk to building. Don't talk to building inspectors.
Roasted Right says, who owns a home for 30 years? Average home ownership is 10. Yep. But presumably somebody buys it after that.
F
So-
that guy, though, right?
Your problem now.
I built this deck of straw. Enjoy.
Next question.
Okay, next question. I had this question yesterday or 2 days ago when I was in the showroom. Is composite slippery?
This has some good answers.
Some are and some aren't.
Yeah.
Depends.
The reason, yes, they all depend. The reason this question gets asked is because somebody knows somebody who says their deck is really slippery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about somebody who's gone with, we always talk about Fibron.
I was like, ooh, you better name drop it or I'm going to. Because
Yeah.
a guy walked in today with a sample. And I was like,
Yeah.
that doesn't exist anymore.
So Fibron Horizon line, like that whole Concordia line,
Yeah.
is very slippery. And when it gets wet, it's very slippery.
That Protect Advantage line too, right? They've got
That's gone now, but yeah. Or
that was
armadillo
what- that was
decking.
what that guy had. He had a
Super slippery.
chestnut brown. He walked in and was like, I have this and I'm trying to match it. And I was like, lucky for you, that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, they absolutely can be very slippery. However, if you're talking about the king of the crop, cream of the crop,
Yeah.
king of the thing,
Jungle?
Cream
King-
rises to the top.
right. That's
Cream
where
of the-
Decorator's Voyage is.
Cream of the crop.
Cream of the crop.
So Decorator's Voyage
What
is...
did you mess up the other day? You texted me.
Oh, man. All sorts of... no, I don't remember. But it was like... But the word I messed up gave the whole thing an entirely different meaning.
Yeah.
To the point that I read it was like, oh, shit, I better clarify because he's probably going to think I'm being a dick here. You can look that up. I'll talk. The Decorator's Voyage, however, on the other hand, has like astonishing traction. Like it's crazy how much traction is. When people walk into our store and they walk in that deck, they literally stop and be like, holy smokes, this one's super grippy.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it doesn't, not all composite is slippery. Some of them are slippery and some of them are not. Decorator's Voyage is easily the best out there. You've also got products like the Decorator's Vault line is really, really good. Any PVC like the Fibron Paramount or Promenade lines, very, very good. AZEC, pretty good. All the PVC lines are really good. Clubhouse, very good.
Yeah.
Like there are some that are quite good. Voyage is the king, and then there's some that are very, very slippery. This is literally on a 10 scale.
It's on a
there's
scale.
some that are 1s and there's some that are 10s. It's all over
spectrum.
the place.
Yeah.
So if that's important to you, make sure you ask about that and test them out. Did you find it?
Did you find it?
Not yet.
Okay. Can I move on to the next question?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Well, I'll have a comment here that we can go through.
Go ahead.
FBP Canuck says, Shane, you just gave 100% perfect response. This is why I wanted to read this one.
Boost your ego a little? Is that why?
To using a steel frame versus PT frame deck with your deck in comparison. Commission check is in the mail.
Yo, I was here too.
This is a group effort.
So yeah, his point is that steel frame, they warranty it for 25 years. It'll last freaking 80. It'll last forever. So you'll replace your wood framing 10 times in the lifespan of that steel deck. And yes, the steel deck costs more, depending on the job. Could be 3 times more on the framing, just the framing, not everything else. Yeah. Could be 4 times more, could be whatever. But you've made that up after the first 2 or 3 times you've had to replace your wood deck. You've made that up. So,
what I have found,
he also says Apex is the best for slip.
By the way, yeah, you don't want us to talk about Apex on here. What I have found is that you and I
talk a lot,
talk chat
too much
on too many platforms. Too much.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, next question. This is a good one because I know this will get Wade talking. How or
whose fault is it if the deck fails?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of along those lines. How or when should I get a permit?
Ooh,
whenever you feel like you have too much money.
Zing.
Do deck inspectors do anything?
Yep.
Is that a real question?
No.
How or when should you get a permit? The proper answer to that is when you're
building something.
Your local building department says you need one. That's when you should get a permit.
Fair enough. Like I'd be flying in the face of all the guys that are famous on TV, like Baumler and Holmes, and those guys are like, pull permits and blah, blah. So part of pulling permits is that you are kind of like a reputable business. And so if you're hiring a contractor and the contractor refuses to pull a permit,
something's up.
That's a red flag that this guy is not going to do it properly.
Yep.
Right? Or girl. But if you're a homeowner and you're going to build your own deck and you have sought advice from somebody,
good word,
or built the deck according to the specs that the city says they require for a permit, then you should be good.
Unless you do it on the front of your house, and then you have to pay extra taxes.
No, you have to pay extra tax all the time.
That's
but
true.
The tax that you have to pay when you put a deck attached to your house is not so significant that you should avoid getting a permit because you don't want to pay $17 a year more.
Right.
It's like, well, the number is so low. Your taxes are going to go up like marginally.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to spend $10,000 on this deck. But while we're standing here talking about it, you're like, yeah, but I'm not paying that $17 a year. It's like,
just pull the permit.
That's not the reason. Reasons for pulling a permit. When you go to sell your house again, you may have a home inspection done. And one of the things that some home inspectors will look for, because not all home inspectors look for this, but they might pull permits for your house and see if that deck had a permit. And if it didn't, then right on the 11th hour, as you're about to close, you get hit with got to get a permit for this deck.
For a 10-year-old deck.
And what happens if you pull a permit for this deck and it is on an easement? And now you have to knock the deck down. And the homeowner that's about to buy your house is like, ugh, this is a headache. Take $50,000 off. Because we have to take the deck off, then we have to get the deck put back on, and we got to get permits, and because now we've raised flags, and blah, blah. And so you could have avoided all of that by getting a permit at the start.
Save $17, all right?
Right.
$17.
A year, though. Like, that's compounding.
Right.
And by the time the city builds a new stadium, that 17 is now 23. And so now you save $50.
Sure.
$40. Anyways,
that's one of the that's the biggest reason too.
You should get permits.
Yeah.
If
you're on a farm.
Yeah.
And you're going to be living there and you're going to own that farm for the next 100 years. It's going to be in your family. Whatever. You do you.
The other caveat to this, I guess, is that we're assuming this deck is 3 feet high. I'm assuming the deck is 3 feet high.
Right. It's just a standard.
Right. But if this deck is 6 feet or more, like if this is a 2nd story deck, get a permit. Absolutely get a permit.
Yep.
Because people will die. from that height. You know what I mean? Like if the deck falls, it may fall on someone, or somebody may, like, you may be seriously injured. And then if you end up in court for anything, if you're trying to sue any person when you're in court and they're like, you don't have a permit, it's just like,
you lost.
You might as well leave
immediately.
You have no, there's like, well, how did you build this? Well, I watched YouTube. And the guy said, and he's a really good YouTube guy. He's got millions of followers. And he says I should have built it like this. I was like, but that's not, there's no stamp on that.
Right.
Okay. And off you go.
Off you go.
So check with your local building department, give them the parameters of what you're about to do, and be like, do I need a permit? And if they say yes, well, you should probably get a permit.
I feel like I need one of those disclaimers for this show now.
Yeah, you
The
do.
Ultimate Deck Shop does not give legal advice.
This is true.
We don't. Yeah.
So
we can give you some pointers.
we give pointers.
I'll give you my opinion.
Do you got any other Instagram questions before
No.
we move on?
No, we really. Oh, look at
Bing. That was his. He wrote it.
I wrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it in.
Bryce123 says, FPP Canuck says, I always say get the permit for anything steel to protect you and future owners of your deck. Just better safe than sorry.
I think he's pushing for a steel agenda there.
Yeah, I don't know what this guy does for a living, but
Wood applies to that too, Jason. Wood applies to that as well. It's like, well, if it's steel, you got to protect the other people. But if
exactly.
it's wood,
Yeah,
well, they're already done.
it won't make it to the next homeowner, so whatever.
Yeah, you got to take it down 3 times.
Whatever.
Okay. Question 6. What is joist tape?
Ooh,
What
this
is
on
it?
there, eh? Are these in order of most frequently asked to?
Least frequently asked.
Is it in order?
Yeah.
So joist tape is just a flexible flashing membrane for the tops of your joists or your beams or wherever.
Yeah.
It's just a self-adhesive tape that's designed to keep water off of areas that are susceptible to rot. So tops of your joist is great to do because water can get trapped between the deck board that's sitting on it. It sandwiches between, and there's no sunlight or much airflow there, so it doesn't dry out right away. Water seeps into the fastener holes where the screws went, gets into the untreated core of the board and can rot faster. Multiple plies together like beams and double rim joists and whatnot. Water gets between them, doesn't dry out, rots there. Posts that are blocked in, all these areas where water can kind of creep into. Joist tape helps you to seal up those areas so water can't get there in the first place, so it protects your deck for much longer. It's cheap. They're talking like 50 to 75 cents a square foot, probably worth of tape to do your whole deck.
$17 a year.
Right. Yeah. You save money there.
I'm not paying that. I will not pay that.
So it's super cheap insurance to ensure that a wood frame is going to last as long as the super long lasting composite that you're putting on top. I think it's a no-brainer. It's a very low portion of the cost of a project. Why not do it? There's multiple brands out there. Like, it's not hard to find anymore.
And G-tape's the best.
G-tape is but the best that we've found. That's for darn sure.
It's just the nicest
By
to
a
work
lot.
with. By a lot. So, one of the other things that people don't consider immediately when they start to think about this added moisture into the frame is that previously, like before composites were being used so widely, is that the deck board used to share some of the responsibility of the moisture that would fall onto a deck. And so some of it could evaporate off of the board and then the frame would be responsible for holding some. But now when your boards are plastic or PVC,
they don't take responsibility for nothing.
That's
those
right.
guys.
They're much like a building inspector.
Deadbeat boards.
Yeah, they just they don't do that. It all goes to your frame.
Well,
So
it's more important for joist tape on a composite deck than
certainly more important for
Yes.
on a wood deck.
Yep.
Right?
That's right.
And not only that, because the composite's going to last longer.
Mm-hmm.
If you build an entire, like a whole wood deck, the deck boards themselves are going to be in rough shape at the same time as a frame is in rough shape, probably. They're all going to kind of rot at the same pace. But the composite's going to last, like I said, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And the wood underneath will not get even close to that.
Unless you put it in a landfill and then it breaks down super fast in the landfill.
Right. So yeah, it's cheap insurance to make sure your deck framing lasts longer. That's what joist tape is.
Okay, next question.
Can be found at www.tuds.ca.
Will my composite decking scratch?
Yes.
No.
Which one is it?
Which composite is it?
Doesn't matter.
one of those
They're all
questions.
gonna scratch. I was gonna say this is the least asterisk one of the entire bunch so far.
Yeah, it's just like if you can cut it, you can scratch it.
Right.
But there are some that are significantly better than others.
When I move my barbecue or patio furniture, will my decking scratch?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A little bit.
So it's
What
much
can I
like the
do about it?
slippery
Leave your
question.
stuff where it is.
There's
man.
a scale
Call
here.
your friend to help you.
Some are a 1 out of 10 for scratch resistance, and some are a 10 out of 10. Now, 10 out of 10 doesn't mean they won't scratch. It's just like relative to others, they're the best kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you look at Trex Transcend or Vecca decking or Clubhouse, those are very durable boards.
I would
takes
even
quite a bit
argue
to
that
scratch them.
the Fibron Good Life one is super strong as well.
Prominent.
Fairly good, yeah. But if you get into like Trex Enhance or Armadillo or some of these brands that are like lower
Fibron,
priced,
the Fibron Concordia line.
they don't have great scratch resistance.
Yep.
So
TimberTech's got a bunch in the some of that TimberTech line. That Legacy line would scratch super easy.
Yeah. So it just depends. It's like we always use the analogy of like you buy a brand new car and you're all worried about getting a door ding. It's like, eventually you're going to get the door ding. You're going to get the swirl marks and eventually that's going to happen. It's just like, how long does it take? It's the same with decking. You get a more durable board, it'll take longer to scratch.
Ford tailgates usually collapse within the first 30 days of getting them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I bet you
Personal
the deck boards
experience,
that hit them didn't have a scratch on them though.
No.
So yeah, if that's important to you, when it should be important to you is like if you have large dogs that are very rambunctious that spend a lot of time on the deck, then don't get something like a TimberTech Terrain that does scratch a little bit more easy. Go with a more durable decking if that's going to bother you.
Yeah.
So again, do your research because some are good and some are not great, and it's not that the ones that scratch easy are necessarily bad boards. It's just you're buying a budget board that's not part of the feature set is for it to be super durable. So.
Deck dogs are the worst.
Deck dogs. I built a deck one time, and this came up in my my memories recently, or maybe I was looking at our Google Business something or other, and so I built this deck. It was Fibron Rosewood out of the Horizon line.
That was the one you did those fancy set of stairs on.
Yeah, it had the little
yeah.
stadium bench seating octagonal stairs, whatever. But I remember the homeowner sent me a picture later, and they had put all their patio furniture out, and every leg of every chair and table had tennis balls in the bottom. They had cut a slit in tennis balls and put them on the bottom. There was probably 30 tennis balls in this deck because it was like every leg's got four of them. The table's got it. The lounger's got it. It was just yellow tennis balls everywhere. So he was not wanting to
He didn't want his deck scratched.
scratch that deck up. Not yet. So
That leads into the next question. How do I build stairs?
Yeah.
I know it wasn't a great question.
this seems like a good, I should read this here.
Okay.
First of all, Windsor Plywood Sherwood Park says, looking good, Wade.
Thanks, buddy.
Gill Oilers.
Yep.
Gil.
He was probably at
Took
the
a run
game
at
last
that.
night.
Yeah, he might still be there, actually. Woke up, effed up. Haney Construction says, sorry I missed the beginning of the podcast. Is the theme the top 10 rhetorical questions asked by DIY people / anyone who thinks they're better than a professional deck builder?
Yes.
Yeah, you could name it that if you would like,
Yep,
Bryce.
that's pretty close.
How do you build stairs?
Yeah, that was the question.
So to Haney's point, maybe you should just hire somebody. If you're not sure.
They can be super easy and they can be super complicated. But
This answer for DIY customers.
yeah, like if you're a DIY customer, there are pre-built steel stringers, there are pre-built wood stringers, and sometimes you can find exceptionally customer-focused businesses that will cut stringers for you, like us.
Way to work that in there, Wade.
But like, I don't know, cutting a set of string. It took me a full year of carpentry before I was comfortable cutting a set of stringers. And every time you do it, you're like, oh man, I hope I don't blow this. But then you get it, and eventually it's just like, well, I get it. Now I'm not nervous to cut them. But I had a guy in the store the other day in Saskatoon, and he wanted to do, how did he want to do this? He wanted, you know how when you build like a a wraparound set of stairs, and the middle stringer that comes off, you have to cut the riser on an angle, and then you have to cut that tread longer.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that number was? Is it 1.75? Or 1.37
no,
or something?
not off the top of my head.
So
Pythagorean theorem there.
anyways, I was just like, oh, you're going to have to cut
On a
that.
45, I remember it was 1.08, but
Right.
I don't remember the 90-degree corner.
So anyways, I was like, you're going to have to cut that stringer a little bit longer because when you cut the boards, they're going to be longer. And he was just like,
So confused.
he was looking so far past me when I was talking to him. And then he stopped and was like, well, I don't think I can do that. And I was like, I don't think you should either.
Yeah.
But here's a solution. And so I was like, you cut these stringers and then you cut these stringers. And then in here, you build boxes out of 2x8s and then screw them to the stringers, and like creativity required.
Yep.
He was just like, yeah, I think that's probably what I'm going to do. But to put together a set of wraparound stairs is a ton of work.
Yep.
And when we do labor estimates for people on our managed install service, it's like, well, the set of stairs is going to cost as much as my whole deck. And I was like, it will take that long.
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they're like, I want to do a stair all across the front because I don't want any railing there. Because they think it's going to be less money, not because they necessarily don't want the railing, but they're like, the railing's expensive. Ma'am, you got 3 steps in the front of that thing. 20-foot wide set of steps is going to be 3 times the cost of just doing the railing there.
Yep. Just
do the railing there if that's the reason you were trying to do it. It's not cheaper. The stairs are like, people don't think about it. Like, not only square footage wise are they like significant, especially on a wide set of steps, but they're more complex. So if you're hiring somebody to build them, they're going to charge more for stairs than they would for building the deck surface. It's more complicated, takes more time, it's more detail work.
Yep.
But yeah, like, so if you're just needing to figure out your rise and run, like there's math that you can use to figure that out, or you can go to dex.com and use the calculator to figure out the rise and run.
Yep.
But if you don't know what to do with the rise and run after you figure it out, then you should probably just hire somebody.
Get someone else to build it.
Yeah, like if you don't know if you don't know what a stair gauge is, and you don't know what a framing square is, and you don't know how to put the stair gauge on the framing square and put it on the lumber and draw out your bird's mouth, then move on.
This is the entire reason why this pre-cut stair stringers that market exists.
Yep.
Is for these people that they don't know how to figure it out. So they're not ideal because your rise and run is fixed on a steel stair stringer or a pre-cut wood stringer. You're almost every time it's 7.5 inches rise, which is fine. If your deck requires a 7.5 inch rise, then knock your socks off. Like, go use those stringers. They'll work out great.
Shane,
I actually knocked my socks off today in anticipation of that. But that happens like 4% of the time. Do you actually need 7.5?
Right.
You need 6 3/8 or 7 15/16, or like you need something other than that. So if you are off by that, then that whole stair stringer is going to be one of 3 things: out of level this way, out of level this way, or the rise between the first step and the rest of the steps is going to be off, or the rise at the top from the rest of the steps is going to be off because you've had to account for the difference in height. Like, so they're just a disaster most of the time.
Yeah.
So cutting custom stringers is the answer, but yes, it's complicated. So you might have to hire that out.
And now Haney has told us how to do it.
Yeah, did he? Are you going to read it, or are you just going to leave it? Okay, you don't have to.
I was pre-reading. I want to read it because it's funny. So here's how you do it. Haney's instructions. This should make it simple for anybody. The legs of a 30, 60, 90 triangle are x and x radical 3 with a hypotenuse of 2 times. The legs of a 45, 45, 90 triangle are x and x with a hypotenuse of 1.4142, 7th grade geometry. So just do that, and you'll have
do that.
Wraparound stairs.
There you go. Okay, next question. What is the best brand of decking?
Nope. I'll be honest. Well, it depends on a lot of things, but if you're asking me, no holds barred, no budget concerns, no nothing, what the best, I think, product out there right now is, I believe that's Decorator's Voyage.
Oh, there you go.
Understand that's a line of decking, not just a brand.
Right.
There's no best brand, in my opinion. It depends on some things, but the best board in the market right now is Decorator's Voyage. That could change soon. There's some things on the horizon from some other brands.
It's so like, yeah, Shane's right. It's totally impossible to answer that question
Mm-hmm.
because, like, that's like saying, what's the best vehicle?
Right.
Brand.
Surprisingly
What's the
enough,
best vehicle brand? Yeah.
often searched though.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but like the best vehicle for you, Bryce, is not the best vehicle for me
That's true.
because you drive from home to here, and then you do like a little bit of commuting back and forth between Saskatoon.
Man, you're really shrinking my world, man.
I'm just saying, like, but when I like,
If you got out more, you could have a cooler car. Is what he's saying.
That's what I'm hearing.
but like, you don't need to move 10,000 pounds worth of product at a time.
Yep.
And so the vehicle I need is atrocious on fuel compared to yours.
Obnoxious, even.
Right. But
Good word.
like, your vehicle doesn't work for me. Not even in not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
So even my leisure events require a different vehicle than yours, right? And
Yep.
so
But that's when it comes to what's the best brand. It's like, well, for Wade, maybe it's Ford because he needs a heavy duty truck.
but I don't
That'll break down all the time.
but I don't think that they're
But his
half tons are that great.
he could also.
Yeah.
You ask somebody else a question,
Exactly.
they're probably going to say, "Oh, it's GM."
Yeah.
You ask a different guy, he's going to be like, "Oh, it's, I don't know if anybody exists out there that would say Toyota, but potentially that could be an answer."
Okay, what's the worst brand of deck?
But for Bryce, maybe the number one brand, because what he needs is a smaller car that's fuel efficient. Maybe his is Honda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, does Honda make the best truck? No, absolutely not. Does Honda even don't even really hardly make a truck? Like, so that's the same as decking. There's no one brand that's the best across the board in every category, every price point, in all of their lines.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, Windsor Sherwood Park says 100% Decorator's Voyage. So I'm saying that from a
That's crazy.
cumulative look at this thing. I think it's the best product. Is it the best at everything? No, it's not. It's not the most durable to scratching. I would
Nope.
still choose Trex Transcend over that product. So
Correct.
if that's what's important to you, do that.
Mm-hmm.
If traction's important to you, well, this is unmatched. Then go there. Like,
well, some of the
expansion contraction.
some of the PVCs
Solid.
are matched, right? Like Clubhouse decking would have a similar traction to Decorator's Voyage.
Yeah, it's really good too. Yeah.
But the expansion and contraction, like that's where it falls apart for me on that one.
Yeah. I believe you score this thing on whatever, say 5 metrics of like traction and scratch durability and thermal stability and warranty and all these things. What I'm saying is that Decorator's Voyage probably, when you add those scores all up, ends up the
Being
best
better.
product out there.
Absolutely.
Best overall.
Best overall. Not
Best in-
necessarily
best
best
in
at any
show.
one thing.
Best of show. And so, yep, I would agree with that. And I think if you're on a budget board, if money is a factor, then I believe that Fibron probably has that at entry level.
Yeah, the Fibron Good Life line is really good. Decorator's Trailhead, we don't have much experience with. Hear a lot of good things about it too at the budget board end, but I don't have enough experience with it to tell you that, but it seems like it's good as well. So there's good options at every budget.
Okay, number 10. What is the best railing for your deck?
Aluminum. Pre-finished aluminum rail.
Why?
Because it's pre-finished and then you don't have to maintain it.
Pre-finished.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just
it's
another
a
wide
very
open question.
open-ended question for sure, because there's so many different brands, styles, like materials to choose from. But there's no doubt that in Canada, that aluminum is king. It's when people do composite decks, it's 97% aluminum railing going on it, and the reasons for that is, I think part like durability and the no maintenance part of it, easy to install.
Easy to install, I think, is for me.
Its thermal stability is great. It doesn't crack or shrink or squeak or any of that stuff. Like, it's
Some of them.
all around. It's just a really good material to build railing out of.
Yeah, it goes together well.
Doesn't rust.
Stays together well.
Yeah.
Right? And
And is very kitted out and friendly off the shelf for anybody to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
homeowner can grab
all
all their railing, go and snap it all together and throw a few leg bolts in it, and really you've got yourself it's hard to mess that up.
Yep.
It doesn't require a lot of craftsmanship to put together an aluminum railing system that's comes as a kit, essentially.
and some of that composite rail that you see, like, it's getting better as far as the kitting it out to go to the DIY market.
Yeah.
But holy smokes, like, it used to be almost impossible to order, let alone put together. Like, you had to know your stuff inside and out to be able to even quote a job for someone.
Yeah.
So it was really tricky.
Now, that said, it's got a specific look to it. If you're looking for something a little bit more bulky or some different profiles that aluminum doesn't generally offer, then like I think composite railing looks nicer.
But does it
in
look
most applications? It looks nicer.
Does it look that much nicer?
Not for me, it doesn't.
I think in some cases it does, yeah.
Yeah.
But then you get into the different infills too. It's like pickets versus glass versus cable rail. Like there's all sorts of different things here. So what's the best depends on what you're really looking for. But I think the most universally like option is just aluminum railing.
Just go
Pre-finished aluminum,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
is probably the best.
Yeah.
Lightweight, like there are steel rail kits, but you have to paint them, and you got to be cautious of the steel shavings when you're putting it on in your deck, and because that'll get on there and rust all the decking.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep.
Personal preference, but
I have a couple more, but we don't need to. They're not.
Let her rip.
I'll grip it and rip it.
Okay.
I'm here all night.
I'm not.
What should my deck cost?
Well, Scott Kelly says $5,000 is a good budget to start with. I think he said one time.
USD, right?
Yeah, it could be USD.
Given that he lives there.
And he only builds steel frame decks.
Right. So your deck should cost, like, there's no answer to this. There is literally no answer to this. A deck can be
11% of your house.
It literally could be
I made that up.
$15 a square foot for materials, and you're going to build it yourself because you're going budget and cheap and don't need rail and whatever else. And it could be $200 a square foot because you're using a high-end composite and high-end rail, and you're doing a screen room, and it can range so much that it's ridiculous.
How much does an engagement ring cost? It's supposed to be 2 months' salary.
Wow.
Is that
I
what
think
they're?
so. I think it
what
was
they say?
3 months salary, but that's what it used to be.
Right. So then your deck should be 6 at least,
Yeah.
6 months salary.
because you'll probably have that longer.
Oh.
This is the same thing.
Whoa.
Yowza. This is the same question, same thing as asking how much a house should cost.
Right.
Different
House
people are
costs
set up for different things.
in what?
Van-
Moose Jaw,
Mm-hmm.
a 700 square foot bungalow might cost $150,000.
Yep.
In Toronto, that same exact house costs $1.4 million. And then a 7,000 square foot house costs a lot different. Like, it just totally depends. We always say, like, first, if you're just doing an average deck, we always kind of say, like, start with a number of like $50 a square foot in your head to get your mind around the ballpark, because it is possible to get all the materials for your deck within $50. It could be more, it could be a little bit less, but that's where you can kind of start.
Yep.
And if you want the extras, fancier things, privacy walls and all this other skirting it in, that's all going to be above and beyond that. But if you're just like, I don't know where to start, it's like, okay, well, your 100 square foot deck is $5,000 worth of materials.
Right.
How much is the labor? Double that. Like, that'll get you in the right mindset anyway to start to digest that a little bit, and then you can tweak from there. It's like that's a workable budget to start with. Now, that might be more now. Like, I used to use $50 the last few years. Things have gotten more expensive. Maybe it should be 60 or 70 you start with now, but like, you can get something done within that price range.
Yeah.
Yep. Should I put lights on my deck?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
No asterisks.
The
The best accessory you can add to your deck
is lights.
is lights. It's fractionally small cost of the deck, but improves the aesthetic and the usability and the safety of it by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most impactful thing. Like, impact to dollars ratio on that is significant.
If you decide that you want to put the most expensive Trex deck board on your deck or the least expensive Trex deck board, nobody knows or cares.
Right.
They show up and they're like, Trex deck. And you're like, actually, it's a Fibron deck. And it was like an entry level. Nobody, like, they don't even know the difference. Most consumers don't know the difference between the brands.
Yeah.
So they'll call it a Trex deck. But maybe it isn't. But anyways, if you do the most expensive composite board,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get any recognition for that. Nobody knows or cares that you spent that much on the board.
Yep.
They just know that, oh, you got one of those maintenance-free decks. That's nice. You get to wash it off. But if you spend $1,000 on lights, if you made your deck boards $4,000 less expensive and you made a $1,000 investment into lights, everybody would walk over and be like, oh man, those lights are so cool.
Yeah.
You should,
For sure.
we should put lights on our deck. And that's it. That'll be the conversation. What kind of decking is that? So it's composite.
Yeah.
Those lights are amazing.
A deck is just an empty room until you accessorize it.
It's a room with no walls.
Has no
Really,
soul.
it is. Right? Until you put the furniture and the accessories and the lighting and stuff onto it, like that's what creates the vibe out there.
Mm-hmm.
A deck that's just empty with a barbecue on it is not super fun or usable. So add the vibe, add the ambiance. That's what you put it there for. That's why you have lamps in your house. Like you don't hang out in completely dark rooms.
Right.
That's why lights have dimmers, and that's why you have different types of lights in a room. Like
depends how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I don't sleep with the lights on, Shane.
FPP Canuck says, agree 100% on the lights. Completely finishes off your projects.
Yep.
So there you go. Yes, do lights.
Any final words?
have a good weekend.
That's it, hey?
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay,
Sorry,
fine.
guys.
Oh, that was good. How many do we have? 12?
12.
Good deal. Nope, there's no more. Not much more from me. Those are good questions. Good episode. Welcome to the team. Hey?
Yeah.
You didn't even intro your
Why didn't it?
Sorry,
Sorry,
Kyler.
Kyler.
Kyler's sitting over here in the corner quietly.
It's his first podcast,
right?
and he made it look this good.
You could have at least given him some lights over in that corner of the room.
I could have given him a microphone too, but
Sit over here.
didn't want him to talk back on his first day.
Right.
So that'll be my sign off. Welcome, Kyler, to the marketing team at the Ultimate Deck Shop.
Welcome, Kyler.
You'll be seeing some more of his product coming out.
Yeah, his work.
Yeah, his work, yeah.
So,
anyways, until next week, take it easy, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.
Hey, thank you for listening to the Ultimate Deck Podcast. Now you know what we're about. Check the site, come and shop. UltimateDeckShop.com. Hit us right away for sponsorships or tell us if you want to collaborate. Let's go. Check us out on any social networks. Thank you for listening.